Life-saving cancer drugs wasted, and it's costing us billions of dollars.
Investigative reporter Chris Negus discovered why and found out most patients have no idea it's happening.
Think about the concept like this. You go to buy tennis shoes, but they only sell them in boxes of 3. Obviously, you only need 2, which means you need to throw a perfectly good shoe in the trash. But in this case, we're talking about throwing cancer drugs in the trash, and it's costing all of us.
Your diagnosis was then?
Day by day, the news is improving for Steve Francis of Hillsborough. He describes life as a roller coaster, starting last October.
I wasn't shocked.
Diagnosed with cancer at his 50-year colonoscopy, the otherwise healthy Francis found himself fighting for his life. On this day at St. Anthony's Cancer Care Center, he's finishing radiation treatment, getting ready for chemotherapy.
I'm anticipating that's going to be 6 months.
The doctors will prescribe the drugs, but what Francis doesn't realize, and what most patients don't know, is oftentimes the drugs used to treat patients are wasted. Not because they're bad, but because the drugs come in one-size-fits-all vials.
I think it's ridiculous. Why should we be doing that?
Dr. John DePercio oversees oncology at Siteman Cancer Center and witnesses the waste all the time.
And it's more uncommon than common that a drug is not, significant drug is not thrown away per patient, per dose.
Downstairs in the pharmacy, we saw it happen. A pharmacy technician that specializes in chemotherapy drugs fills orders. Part of that daily routine means throwing away perfectly good drugs that are shockingly expensive.
Some of these vials cost tens of thousands of dollars.
Some of them cost tens of thousands of dollars. Some of them are relatively inexpensive. There's no inexpensive cancer drugs, by the way. They're all relatively expensive, and some are phenomenally expensive. So there's a lot of waste in the system.
St. Louis-based Express Scripts offers an example. A patient needs 900 milligrams of a specific drug. Some pharmacies order 2 500-milligram containers, which means they throw away 100 milligrams, costing $753 per dose. Illinois Senator Dick Durbin says the government is complicit in the waste.
When you ask the industry, why do you make them in sizes that are too large, for example, they say, well, the federal government requires it.
This has been going on for eternity, by the way. And so why hasn't anybody yelled and screamed about this before this?
So who's getting rich off this?
The drug companies are getting rich. The doctors are getting rich. The hospitals are getting rich.
DePercio is in favor of a change. One could be coming. Senator Durbin, along with nearly a dozen other U.S. senators, are asking the FDA to investigate the one-size-fits-all approach.
Let's save money in our healthcare system and still give people the treatment they need.
Durbin says the current system costs Medicare and private insurance companies, which means it costs you tax dollars and higher premiums. Not to mention the wasted drugs could potentially help others. Patients like Francis are beginning to understand the problem. He's already been sent too many antibiotics.
We brought the medications in for disposal. I just said it'd be a waste. It's still good.
The current healthcare system now under the microscope. A system with so many positive stories.
I'm very optimistic on my future, and I feel great.
Sometimes overshadowed by high cost and waste. The problem, well diagnosed, but will there be a cure? Dr. DePercio believes a cure could be as simple as making smaller vials. Seems simple. We'll see what happens. This is an issue we will continue to track. Chris Negus, News 4.
Tonight, there are new developments related to a News 4 investigation into wasted cancer drugs.
Investigative reporter Chris Negus explains how lawmakers have now taken a big step forward to reduce the waste.
You can't help but ask, is this why we're broke when you're talking about $1 billion worth of wasted cancer drugs? Yes, it costs insurance providers, but it also costs every taxpayer. A huge problem with a seemingly simple solution.
Your diagnosis was then?
In May, we introduced you to Steve Francis. Like so many others around St. Louis, he's battling cancer. On the day we visited, he was finishing radiation, preparing for chemotherapy.
I'm anticipating that's going to be 6 months.
What patients like Francis often don't realize, many expensive cancer drugs are wasted. Not because they're bad, but because they arrive in one-size-fits-all containers. Cancer doctors see it all the time.
And it's more uncommon than common that significant drug is not thrown away per patient per dose.
Pharmacists see the waste firsthand. We were allowed to see it for ourselves at Siteman Cancer Center. At the time, Illinois Senator Dick Durbin explained some of the frustrating logic behind the waste.
When you ask the industry, why do you make them in sizes that are too large, for example, they say, well, the federal government requires it.
Fast forward to today. A change could be on the horizon. From his office in D.C., Senator Durbin talked to me about a new effort to reduce the problem.
What we're doing is calling for a study on this, and sometimes people say, well, what good is that? All they do in the federal government is study it. But we're serious about it.
Today, a Senate Appropriations Committee passed a bill that includes a provision for that study concerning those one-size-fits-all cancer drug vials. Eventually, that study could lead to legislative action. It's a problem that's been around for years.
Well, let's just be point blank about this. There's no reason for the taxpayers to waste another dollar for cancer drugs that are going to be thrown away. And if the pharmaceutical industry is exploiting the size of these containers so they can make more money, that's just wrong. So once we have the study in place, we'll be able to end this fraud and waste once and for all.
Durbin believes the solution could be as simple as making smaller vials so large quantities of expensive cancer drugs aren't thrown away. Of course, this is an important topic, one we will continue to follow. Chris Nagus, News 4.